Hello, David McMillan here, former smuggler and, well, almost professional jail inmate. I have been arrested in many places, but something obvious that I could have done a long time ago was perhaps have a kind of jail survivor's guide, verbal handbook for those wanting to survive the unthinkable. So, before I die, I'll start this little series on surviving in prison. Now, you think it won't happen to you. It can't happen to you. I'll just tune into this because those mugs, those saps, those half-wits that get themselves into trouble, I'm not like that. That will never happen to me. Have you ever driven past a big prison and wondered what it's like inside? Of course you have. But you also know you're safe from it because you haven't done anything. Well, that was a long time ago and it was trivial anyway. And you've got no plans to do anything that would get you locked up. Or are you really in denial about the possibility? Do you have a partner? Do you have friends that help you in your business? Do you always check things out? Do you follow that Russian proverb, trust but verify? It can happen very easily, especially if somebody you don't like and who doesn't like you has a little bit more influence. To put somebody in prison doesn't take a lot of doing. I've seen it done. I've seen it done very well, as a matter of fact. I recall somebody who went to the trouble of the person he wanted to target. He visited him on a night when the guy was alone. They had a few beers, smoked some cigarettes. This guy kept the cigarette butts and the empty tins. Why? Because when the murder took place, those butts and one of the tins, not thrown out right on the scene, mind you, but nearby, and scuffed over with a bit of newspaper. And the cigarette butts, not too many of them, not a pile, but enough to picture a scene where somebody was waiting. His DNA was all over it, the poor slob. Sure, it was a frame-up, but he didn't have an alibi, and he had a scientist standing there talking about huge odds of a similar DNA match. Now, that's very rare. Sure, that couldn't possibly happen to you. No. But perhaps you've got an ex, an old girlfriend, an unhappy wife whose new boyfriend knows how to frame things quite neatly. Not for a murder, no. But you don't need a murder to go to prison. I can hear you thinking, why is he going on about that so much? Get on with it. Yeah? Or are you in denial to some degree, to the possibilities of danger? Well, let's just say then, it happened. Yeah, you were arrested and you were looking at some prison time. What next? I made a few notes here. Really, something that will help you a lot is if you have prepared for the possibility of, well, perhaps being just on the run, disappearing, but also the very worst case, being locked up. Have you got some money put aside? I don't mean where you're just locked up and you send somebody to get it. It's very good for them. They're quite happy about that. Thank you very much. Now, if you're putting something aside, make it layered. That is, 3 little stashes of where it is, so you don't lose it all when you send somebody out to get stash 1. And how has it all come to this? Well, you're an innocent man, or you're only slightly guilty, or very guilty. Look, it doesn't bother me. I'm just the counsellor here. It's of no concern. But you do need to be prepared. And I've said before, it never hurts to have backup documents. I don't mean you have to break the law to do it. Well, ever since Brexit, you could have a European identity if you have family that goes far enough back, or you find them. But you'll need some other things. Just one tip about leaving things of importance somewhere else. I'm talking about cash, some keys, documentation. You'll need, when you put it aside, just don't bury it somewhere. That's not really safe. But if you have it in a storage locker, make sure it's paid up for a long time. And also, don't put a padlock on it, because that means a key. Make it a combination lock. So if the day comes, you only have to give out numbers. Everything you do for your safety precautions, think of it as passing on instructions under difficult circumstances, where you can only give that information, no physical objects. And if you're hiding something, I don't know, up a drain pipe or screwed into something solid, bear in mind that the half-wit that you ask to go and get it, and be assured it will be a semi-half-wit that you send. Somebody who's too smart, you'll be very nervous about going to get your reserves. Make sure that the half-wit will be able to understand what you're saying. Don't make the job of retrieving it too difficult. And keep it quite simple. Under panel number 5 in the bathroom. I can see complications. But anyway, you've taken all those precautions. And I'll tell you now, they're all for nothing, because they won't do you any good at all. Next, under arrest. You know, one of the things you should set aside around the house or wherever you live or stay is a little prison pack, a very depressing bundle to put together. But it will have 2 cartons of cigarettes. Make sure they're sealed. The prison won't let them in. Well, a lot of prisons don't let them in at all these days. It's all gone vaping. But a few do, and they're still in your property, which is stored somewhere within the prison. That's an asset. After all, some trustee works down there, doesn't he? Yeah. He even clears out the rubbish bin into where... Yeah, when you go in and you have something like cigarettes and say you're not allowed to have them, the officer will say, "I'm sorry, can't have them. They go in the rubbish bin." Does that officer clear out rubbish bins at night? No. The trustee does. The orderly. What they used to call a billet. Anyway, whatever the case, don't worry about losing them. And if you have them, you know they're going to be useful. But you guessed that much already. Take a good book, paperback, soft cover, and take the trouble to buy 2 of them. Remove the inner cover at the back and glue in a 100 note. That's $2.50s if you're in England, but $100 will go down quite flat between the covers of that book. They won't give it a really hard look, because you're just coming in. That's at the softest end. The real searches, for some reason, seem to take place after you've been there a while, or sometimes even when you're coming back from court, when you shouldn't have seen anybody. But you'll need that in your emergency arrest pack. It should also have, of course, socks and underwear and some white T-shirts. But flip-flops, yeah? Seriously, if you don't have them, you won't be able to stand up in the shower without feeling like microbes are eating at your flesh. You'll definitely want those. What else? A couple of other things you can go for in your I'm going to jail pack. A portable transistor radio, AM/FM, digital if it need be, but small. They might let you have it, again they might not. But something they will let you have is a cheap, plasticky, waterproof watch. You know, like those quite reliable Casio digital jobs. Don't make it expensive. I think you might want to sell it straight away and barter for it. But they'll let you have that one. And one that lights up at night to read the dial. You never know when you want a tiny torch to get around. Oh, and your dressing gown. It does seem an odd thing, but you'll never have another chance. Very hard to get. Often they have to be bought through the prison system shops. It takes forever, nightmare, generally. But get that too. All prepared? Oh, and when do you take this? Well, take it straight away. When the police are leading you away, as in, we just want to ask you a few questions, have a think about what might be coming. Take it anyway. You've got nothing to lose. If you have to bring it home with you after a few questions, great, put it aside. But if you didn't take it with you, have you cursed yourself? Nope. The moment you walk out of your door, office, home, in the company of policemen, grab that prison pack. And why are you in prison instead of out on bail? Well, because the police objected to it. Why is that? Because if you've been targeted, of course the person who put forward this phony case, or if it's not phony, if it's something that involves documentation, a lot of money, that gives a good reason for the police to stand by their ground and object to bail. It might be said, might be, but you're going off to prison tonight. Now, that will be the police station at first, and that can be for a couple of days, and I'll go into that in a minute, the next section, just to talk about what you should say, which is nothing, and I'll get that in early, but nonetheless, don't think that by being all pally with the cops that they'll release you on bail. Don't think that because you were uncooperative that somehow they'll keep you. Those things are not connected whatsoever. No. No, you're off to jail. Where? Well, probably a big remand prison. Horrible places. Nobody's very settled. They're kind of awful, but they're so crowded you could end up with in any section of that prison. And with the sentenced prisoners is always a better place to be. But there's a couple of important things to remember when you first get in there. Yeah, sure, they search your bits of stuff, but they'll ask you a few questions. And an important one is, can you share a cell with someone else? Of course you can't. You couldn't stand the thought. But, unless you're some sad sack who wants company. But the point is, how you answer that question is very important. And there is really only one answer. I shit myself. Embarrassing, yes. But that's what you've got to say. You've got bowel troubles, and you're up 3 or 4 times in the night, and sometimes, alas, it just doesn't happen in time. That's why you brought sheets with you. Oh, yes, they're cotton because you've got allergic reactions to polyester. A series of medical annoyances there. Nothing too serious, but serious enough that once written down, they must act on it. You can bring yourself to say, I shit myself early. It'll save you a lot of trouble later. I just hope you didn't shit yourself when you're in the police station. By the way, I should say about single cells, they don't want you to have them. It's very difficult. They'd rather throw you in with, they don't really have dormitories that much anymore, something remotely like them. But generally only cells of up to 4. But even sharing with some detritus off the street is not necessarily the way you want to spend much time. They're usually troubled, often bad sleepers, do extraordinary things not even remotely near the toilet, which is where they should be doing them. I can tell you a hideous story. I went into one place. This guy, the cell was already a wreck. 5 days uneaten food plates lying all over the ground. The TV smashed to pieces. I asked him about that. He said he was an electrician. The electric jug in bits too. The guard sort of shrugged and something resembling pity, but there was nowhere else to put me. I didn't have the wisdom to say, I shit myself. No, they don't want to give you a single cell, so they'll give you a lot of trick answers. I'll throw You have nightmares, do you? Or you just don't like people, or you can't get... Don't go for any soft stuff. Oh, and don't say... Don't go too far by saying I'm a psychopath and I'm likely to kill anybody while I'm sleeping. And that'll stay with you. It'll be a bit of a restriction you don't need later on. Just dropping back to your little experience in the police station, you can be held there for, 24 hours before being brought to a magistrate for, either an extended questioning session or remanded, whatever the case. But they'll ask you a lot of questions. And here's the point. Even if you have a perfectly good explanation, even if you're just busting a gut to explain yourself, don't. Say nothing. You have absolutely nothing to gain whatsoever. Now, police, of course, tell you, if you don't tell us, it's an official thing, if you don't tell us things that later on you rely on in court, it could harm your defence. As in, you might be asked, if you happen to take the stand, why you didn't mention anything back then when you're talking to police. In that eventuality where you're in court being asked that question, you simply say, I was advised by legal counsel not to say anything, not to answer questions. That's it. It's dealt with. It's over. It's not to be held against you, as every judge has to remind a jury. So that police warning doesn't amount to anything. But bear in mind, they're not there to help you. They're trying to see if they've got the material for a charge. And everything you say really only makes it more easy for them to do that. And it's simply, even if you've got a perfectly good explanation, that doesn't mean you can go. If they think they've got something against you, they'll hold you anyway. Tell it to the judge, people say. Yeah. Don't tell it to a policeman. Many big lawyers have broken down the events following careless conversations with policemen. What it amounts to is you're committing yourself to a position. Not only that, the entire record of your conversation can go before a court. That is, when the police ask about trivial things, what's this charge of shoplifting when you were a kid? That doesn't necessarily go in, but what were those strange objects you had? What was that credit card used for on a slab of marble in your kitchen? No, I just chop up a bit of Charlie, officer, but honestly, it's a rare thing, only every second Saturday and every day of the week. The point is, that might not be what your case is about, but the thing is, it will blacken your character. And that's the way it always turns out. You'll be out of there quicker anyway if you don't say anything. In fact, you gain because you learn things. Supposedly, they're meant to put to you various possibilities following their inquiries. Oh, and when I say nothing, I mean zero. Nothing that's quotable or useful. Don't even answer your name if they have a pretty good idea who you are anyway. When that official record starts, you are a sphinx. They'll ask you, do you want some water? Do you need anything? Are you all right? Do you need help? Yeah, I'd like to get out of here. But say nothing. It means the entirety of that event disappears. All of that conversation never happened. But if you partially answer, even on trivial things, is your car going to be all right left at home? Which car? Yeah, it's going downhill from there. All right. Anyway, that's history. You've got the duty lawyer. Don't get your fancy expensive lawyer out there. He won't do you any real good. Not unless he's got an in somewhere, but this is a grey area and seldom works. Tell you the truth, lawyers kind of like you in prison. You're not likely to run off and not likely to go making things worse for the case, which is what most people do when they're out on bail. Nope. You're back in the big house, and go in there with I tell you what, go in there as though you're planning to stay there. Not, not with the attitude, if I can only survive a couple of nights in here, it would be great. When am I getting it? None of that. It's your new home. Forget about the rest of your life for the time being. You can't do anything about it anyway. Whatever's going on out there in your absence, it will happen. Now look around as though you're trying to find a good place to rest. Okay, so you have yourself a single cell. Well done. Now, don't think you're going to be lonely. And who would you get to share it with anyway? Even if you got somebody reasonable, that would tire after a very short time, and there is only one television set. And when you're wanting to sleep, you can do it at will. Now, sure, you can find sometimes somebody that's not too bad. But frankly, I couldn't live with myself for 2 days on the trot if I was cloned. No. Anyway, the point is, you'll see everybody soon enough outside, or if you get a job, which is something you should do pretty quickly within the prison. And I did tell you to try and get to a section where, preferably, people are sentenced. They're not strictly supposed to mix remand prisoners with sentence, but it doesn't mean a damn thing. Especially since they had to find you a single cell, they've got a better chance of finding that over in the sentence section. And if things went well, that's where you are now, your own cell. Outside are the prison population moping around out there, and I can tell you it's not all interesting hardened villains or professional thieves or, inspiring jewel thieves. None of that. Very rarely anyway, certainly less than 5%. 5%, no more. About 25% will be wife beaters, or people who hit, violent towards people they know, either in their family or nearby in their neighbourhoods. Yeah, a solid 25 to 30%, that's what it's taken up with. And that's balanced by another chunk about the same size of, what would you call it, care in the community. Ever since the government ran out of money to keep people in those big, glorious nut houses that were built in the Victorian age, the idea is they have their care for their troubles within the community. And the community, most of them end up, for some stretch, is a prison, charged with something. Sure, they will say they're not meant to be here, it's the wrong place for them, all of that. But that's a lot, really. Then, so that's half the population you'll see out there. Almost all the rest are kind of lowlifes, frankly, who'll try and take advantage of you one way or another. I don't mean they'll intimidate you. They might in a pathetic sort of way, but they know, certainly in a British prison, it doesn't work very well. It kind of goes on in a sloppy, general kind of way. And some people who are in groups can tend to do it. But unless you go walking around with half-wit written all over your face, it won't happen. If there's somebody you'd like to talk to, you'll find an hour out in the exercise yard is plenty enough. Or perhaps you get a job. Well, the kitchens used to be good, but honestly, they're no good anymore. They don't do any cooking from the ground up. It all comes in packets and sacks and frozen shapes imitating chicken and fish. I don't know what it really is, but there won't be any real cooking going on. The last prison kitchens I saw were at Wandsworth a few years ago when Thailand was trying to have me extradited to them. Well, it didn't even look like a kitchen. It looked like a mortuary, moron. Racks and racks of small ovens for cooking portions. Trolleys to carry those portions. They didn't have traditional trays for jail food. People are given plastic plates, plastic knives and forks, that kind of thing. And by the way, if you didn't take something comfortable to wear, you could get some prison-issue clothing. It's like a tracksuit, really. It's not completely uncomfortable, and in some places it's kind of required wearing. Not so much in the UK, in the United States, yes, orange is the new black, but at least try and keep your underwear. I think that's about enough of now you're in jail. It's getting a little depressing, isn't it? But there's more to learn and things you should know about the kind of people you meet and what to do about their little schemes and plans. Yeah, definitely. Oh, and you've got a court case coming along, haven't you? What to do about that, how to spot a lawyer worth something, how to deal with your case, what to do and not to do. You've got to be a busy boy or girl. Okay, you can go and get your jail pack ready. Don't forget the flip-flops. Vital. You'll have 6 toes on each foot if you don't get those. Put together your prison pack and I'll see you next time for jail survival.